Let me just sort out something very sort out there. Huh? Just sort out. What is that? This one, yes.
Right. Uh, yeah, interview has largely still remain the most common. Yeah, although, okay, my personal experience has been that things have changed. If you remember the time when, I can give you an example, 10 years or 15 years ago, or even maybe 20 years ago, it was a bit easier to collect data. People were very receptive, not as mindful about you wasting their time. But to date, it's difficult. There's someone else I'm helping collect data on, is doing a study on small and medium enterprises. We've designed a Google form and we've sent it on various groups. We still haven't gotten responses. Right now, what we want to do is just want to do face-to-face interviews because yeah. So these days, these are the days of freedom, human rights, whatever, where pretty much everyone is at liberty to do what they want to do. So they may respond to your questionnaire or may not respond to your questionnaire. That's one challenge. But the face-to-face interview has one advantage, especially if you've got very good rapport. If you have a very good rapport with the respondents, you're likely going to get a positive response. And the one major advantage is that maybe I should say two. One is that you likely going to be able to have high response rate. Out of maybe 500 questionnaires you distribute, face-to-face interview, you're likely going to get maybe around 450 or thereabout. And in some cases, you can even hit the entire 500 that you're looking for. But at the same time, you can also collect additional data. In the process of doing this interview, you can observe. I'll give you an example. At some point, I was involved in data collection in villages. We were collecting data for a study that had to do with the household income. Okay. Now, the challenge is that once you go to the rural areas and you're collecting data about household income, the first thing that comes to the mind of the villagers is that you're coming from government, and maybe a follow-up to your visit is that they'll be able to get aid, they'll be able to get some money. Now, apparently, they would exaggerate their state of poverty. They are poor, yes, but they would make themselves look so poor because they are afraid that if they make themselves look good, when you're distributing, assuming that you come back to distribute maybe food or something or money, they wouldn't get it here. So when you're doing face-to-face, when somebody is exaggerating their poverty levels, but you're at their house, okay, you can be able to sense that this person, look, he has this, look at the house he's built, look at the surroundings. Yes, he's poor by local standards or international standards, but not as the state that he's putting himself in. So you can probe more, you can come up with additional questions that can help you to make this person realize that all they have to do is to provide accurate data. Okay, but the disadvantage is time consuming and it's also very costly because it will require you to travel across. This one is also commonly used, especially nowadays with the availability of cameras. To date, cameras have assisted in this area. It involves research directly watching or monitoring respondents' behavior without interacting with them. So their advantage is that you really capture things as they are happening in their own natural setting. So there will not be any form of interview bias or something. However, there are certain data you cannot collect because you are just observing. And if you have got some gray areas, there's no one who can really highlight to you. This one is still very common, particularly for those who are doing natural sciences. People that are doing studies in, for example, those that are doing studies in, what do I call, biology, agriculture, whatever, they're likely going to be able to use this kind of data. And so in experiment research, researchers manipulate one or more variables to observe the effects on other variables. It's a cause and effect research, but mostly for scientific purposes. You likely going to go in laboratories, but chances are that you can do quasi experiment. You can do quasi experiment and be able to learn to do it for human beings. Okay. Questionnaire is not the only data collection instrument. There are various instruments that you can be able to use to collect data. Questionnaire isn't the only one, but it's the most commonly used. That's why we are presenting a questionnaire. I don't know, you've seen one before? I'm sure you have. Yes, but questionnaires of two types. There is an open-ended questionnaire and a closed-ended questionnaire. An open-ended, closed-ended questionnaire is also popular, but it's one that usually, yeah. If you look at an open-ended one, is where you've got a question, okay, and then there are lines for the respondents to be able to provide the actual answers. But closed-ended questionnaires are those that look like multiple choice in a way that they probe a particular question with an expectation of a particular response. It will give you various options, and you are likely going to be someone who is going to respond to those options. So, of course, to be able to process data quickly, majority of researchers have high preference on closed-ended questionnaire. Sorry, questionnaires with closed-ended questions. Okay. A questionnaire can be administered through mail, through online, by phone, and face-to-face, but you need to be very, very accurate in collecting data from questionnaire. And what is very important is that you must come up with a questionnaire that is simple, that is straightforward. The mistake that some people make is they design questions in a questionnaire as if they're asking an exam. Remember that these are respondents. They are not there to pass or fail an exam. So you have to ask them questions that they can easily respond to, and those that easily is able to apply to their life. Let's see what this is all about. So questionnaire design is also a very important exercise at any stage, and most likely it is better off done in the following way. It's like, remember the entire research process, you start with a problem for any research process and objectives. Okay. Remember that technically you're providing information that is going to be able to address this problem. You're going to engage in that problem solution identification through fulfillment of activities that are dictated by the following objectives, implying that these will guide questionnaire design. Will be guided by this one. So that's why we're saying you must define objectives, clearly identify the information you seek, identify target audience. You must know who will be answering the questions, and then you must design the question. Sometimes you are advised to use a mix of open-ended and closed questions, but in the process, you must ensure clarity and avoid leading questions, as I said earlier on, simple and precise language to avoid confusion, and come up with sequencing. Start with general questions and go to specific now. It is not good for you to come up with a questionnaire and just scale it up. It is advisable that once you come up with a questionnaire, the first step that you're supposed to get involved in is where you administer it in bits, like to a smaller sample, a smaller, we call it a pilot. Say, for example, if I'm doing a study with Adliyongo University, where there are 500 students, for example, I may not be expected just to complete the questionnaire and and then spread it across to the 500 students. I might sometimes need to maybe look at maybe the first 15 students. I give them as a trial and they give me feedback and I fix areas that maybe are gray. And then once we are sure that the questionnaire is in order, then we can scale it up. And then the questionnaire has to be administered. So it will be very important to choose the best administration. If you look at questionnaire administration, it can basically be categorized into two. Like the face-to-face that we talked about, or the telephone that we talked about, is considered to be interview administered questionnaire. The face-to-face, yeah. Telephone, these are interview administered questionnaire. But when you give someone to fill themselves, it's called self-administered. So if it is a questionnaire online, self-administered questionnaire. Okay. Yeah. Because I send it to you and then you fill it yourself. That's self-administered. You are administering yourself. If I ask you questions and as you're answering, I'm punching in the answers, interview administered. Okay. There are some languages that are comparable to the same. For example, the self-administered questionnaire, others call it drop in and the drop out, something like I take and give it to you, you feel, and I'll correct it. That's what others call, but those are small things. Yeah. It will be very important for you to be very clear on the type of data you're looking for. And it is also very important that you become very meticulous in whatever you're doing, because remember that the data that you're collecting is what is going to be used to make decisions. So when you are done with designing a questionnaire, the next thing that comes clearly is for you to organize fieldwork, meaning that you'll be ready to go out to the field to collect data. So fieldwork refers to practical aspects of data collection. For example, depending on the study, here is marketing. You're working for Cadrex, Malawi Limited. Now there is competition on the market. Soap. Look at number of soap brands that are on the market. There are so many of them. So many brands of soap currently on the market. So many of them. Which one would you wish to get? You could not be sure which one as a customer, but probably the one that appeals to you. Now you are a provider of that product, and yet you are made by heavy competition. So you want to find out the customer perception about your soap as compared to other soaps on the market, so that you can get to design your product in a manner that will satisfy customers. Because you must remember that much of what is needed in any business is customer satisfaction. So what is it that is needed to satisfy customers? So you may not do that kind of study alone. You may need to recruit maybe 20 people to cover the Lilongwe area. Okay, so that when they cover the Lilongwe area, they come back and are able to provide you with the relevant support. So fieldwork refers to practical aspects of data collection, such as recruiting participants, training interviewers, on overseeing the collection process to ensure high quality data. And as you are organizing fieldwork, you need to do planning and preparation, where we'll talk about sampling in the next lesson, but I'll just go straight. You define the sample method to be used, prepare all the materials, and you recruit people. You engage in sampling. I'll discuss this in detail in the next class, in the next slide. You supervise, quality control, and then data will be ready for entering. But what will be very important is that as you are designing your study, you must be very clear about certain things. For example, you must be very clear about the research design. A research design is a comprehensive framework or blueprint for conducting a research project. It outlines the methods and procedures for collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data. And the design ensures that the research problem is effectively addressed, and it guides the researcher in making decisions about sampling data. What we're saying here is precision is very important. When you have a clear problem, you must have, okay, the problem must be clear. For example, here what are we saying? You have a clear plan that has a problem, okay? You have a problem here that has to be tested. Then you choose the method of collecting data, and then you come up with a clear data analysis plan and a budget. These are usually presented in the research proposal. Ideally, your research proposal must be very precise. By someone looking at your document, they must be very clear on what you want to do, how you want to do it, and why. These are the three important things that are supposed to summarize the design. Okay? State clearly what you want to do. Okay? How you want to do it. Why? See? These three things. What you want to do, you're conducting a study. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And why? They will summarize this. So, if you don't have a very clear answer to these questions, do not be surprised if your research design is going to be shaky. Yeah, if you don't have any clear answer to this, don't be surprised if your research design is going to be shaky. Do not be surprised at that point. So a well-constructed research design enhances the validity and reliability of the study. Remember, and this is something that you must always bear in mind, that any research, the data collection process is very critical, because that data is going to inform decisions. Now, if you're going to make decisions based on wrong data or data that cannot be validated, it becomes a problem. So, when we say validation, what do we mean? And when we say reliability, what do we mean? Basically, we are saying it must be what it is. For example, if people say they don't like your product, it must be that indeed, beyond any reasonable doubt, that is the position that the customers have. It must not be something that comes from an error in the data collection, because you can have an error in the data collection where ideally people like your product, but percentage-wise, maybe 70% like it, only 30% don't like it, or maybe 20% don't like it, 80% like it. If you have that situation where majority like your product, but for some reason in your data collection you did not reach the majority that like your product, you only reach the minority that don't like your product, you go back home and start saying our product is not liked, when in fact the real situation is to the contrary. You see that point? That is something that you have to watch very closely at any point when you're involved in data analysis. You must understand that there are various types of research design, which includes exploratory research design. Okay. If you remember, we covered this at the beginning. Exploratory research design is conducted to clarify ambiguous problems or identify new opportunities. It is often used when little is known about the topic and serves as a foundation for future and more structured research. What you must also be aware of is that it serves, especially if you have an idea of a new product. The product has not been there before, it has not been tried, but you want to create one. Such kind of a study would be exploratory because you are trying to collect information about something that really doesn't exist. Okay, so such kind of study would be exploratory. So you have flexible, and it is flexible and unstructured, and focuses on gathering preliminary insights, and uses methods like literature review, expert interview, and pilot surveys. A study to explore consumer attitude toward an innovation before the launch. Majority of the studies that you find in marketing are descriptive. You are going to find exploratory studies, but to some extent you also be able to find descriptive studies. So descriptive research aims to describe characteristics of a population or a phenomenon, and it usually provides an in-depth look at the what of the subject without explaining the why. Okay. Usually, descriptive research looks at the what, but without explaining the why. Okay, this is the situation. People that like this product are 70%. The price that they would prefer is this one, as stated by 70% or 60%. The color that they like is this one. Out of this product range, product A, B, C, D, people like product F, also product D, because as evidenced by this percentage. That's descriptive study. Okay, and then there is another design which we refer to as the conclusive research design. And the purpose of the research design that is conclusive in nature, it seeks to provide information for decision making by testing specific hypotheses for analyzing cause-effect relationship. You've the following types. Examines causal research, which examines cause and effect relationship. For example, how price change affects sales. And then descriptive research, which confirms assumption and provides statistical analysis. Okay. But these are the features. A good example would be a study determining whether change in packaging will increase product sales. It's a conclusive research where you're saying, if we do the following, what consequences are we likely going to get? Okay. I don't know if there's any question or comment before we go to issue of secondary data. Yeah. If you look at secondary data, as I said earlier on, it's data that is already collected. Sometimes, for example, if you conduct a study and if you publish that study, someone who uses your data to analyze your data and write their own research, that particular individual technically is collecting secondary data. In your study, it was primary data. If you collect data and publish it, in your study, it is primary data. But in my study, it is secondary data. Getting the point, eh? In your study, it is primary data. But in my study, it is the secondary data. Okay. Now, secondary data refers to data that has been previously collected and published by other researchers, institutions, or organizations. It is often used when primary data collection is too time consuming or costly, and it provides a starting point for research. And secondary data is typically found in sources such as, for example, internal sources. When you look at company records and reports, sales data and customer feedback, financial statements. Okay. External sources, government publications, trade journals and industry reports, academic research articles and case studies, international organizations, online database. They provide external sources. You can use primary data to provide an argument about the need for you to conduct a particular study, depending on various behavior of results that you'll be able to get in terms of the pattern. Okay, if you see a downward trend in a particular activity, secondary data become internal sources become important, but external sources like government publications, census reports, and economic surveys are also very, very pertinent. Yeah, secondary data is very important. It provides a basis through which you can come up with research questions or hypotheses, and ultimately, through the use of secondary data, you can have information, and through it you can develop a very good topic. In fact, sometimes you're going to be able to see a problem. You identify a gap in knowledge based on your analysis of secondary data. It will provide you specific areas which do not have answers, through which you would want to provide answers for. And technically, you see that it offers insights into trends and historical patterns, and very useful for exploratory research. Secondary data collection is, yes, challenging, but sometimes may not be as challenging as primary data, especially if you can improve to be able to have access to information. If there can be availability of access to information, then that works better. So the collection of secondary data involves identifying and accessing relevant previously gathered information. Unlike primary data collection, which requires directly engaging with respondents, secondary data collection is based on reviewing available resources. And it will be very important that you don't just collect willy-nilly, but you must collect it using the following: come up with clear objectives. What information are you looking for? And at the same time, where can you get it? And is it reliable? Okay, then you must analyze it. You will see that that research can sometimes be, validated by the use of both. You can have confidence about your results if, for example, the findings of your primary data are complementing the existing data already. Yeah. So the challenges in collecting secondary data is that data that you are collecting was not originally collected based on your study or your objectives. Those that collected it had other reasons behind it, some of which may not be in line with what you are looking for. So the data may not be perfectly match your requirement, and information may be outdated or irrelevant to the current study, and researcher has no control on the accuracy or reliability of the data. But despite these challenges, secondary data can be a valuable source for marketing research, especially when time or resources are limited. Right, let's look at research design. No, is that correct? Check. Yeah, we had covered a little bit of this earlier on, but we would like to be able to cover it in a little more detail. One thing that is interesting with research is that there are certain things that you can cover ahead while you're covering one topic. You can cover ahead, and then there are certain things that will require that you do a backtrack. So, research design and information sources. When we talk about research design, very important aspect. And if you remember that time, I gave you an onion. you have that. You still have that on you. By the way, have you answered the assignment yet? Okay, you said it. Okay. Research design. You remember that onion? I gave you 2 onions. There was one which was very basic, straightforward, and another one was more comprehensive. The entire research rests in the onion. That onion. Remember the onion? Yes. That's where research centers around. So, research design refers to the framework or blueprint for conducting a research study. Okay, it outlines the procedures for collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data to address research questions, and the design helps ensure that the study is conducted systematically, reducing biases and maximizing accuracy. Okay, here what you find is the following things that take place. There is the research approach, there is the sampling method, there is data collection techniques, and analysis plan. So the approach, you can choose your study, you can choose that it can be either qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method. Sampling method, you're looking at how participants or data sources are chosen. And data collection techniques, you can look at surveys, experiments, or observations. Analysis plan, these are the techniques used to process and interpret the data. So the aim is to structure the research so that the findings are reliable, valid, and capable of answering the research objectives. That's what is important. So, these days, it is in the past, of course, there are some studies that are purely qualitative, while some studies are quantitative. But you will find that these days, there is a tendency towards taking a mixed method approach. Now, this section keeps coming. Types of designs, this keeps coming. We just looked at it: exploratory, descriptive, conclusive, and the things are the same, but it's a little more elaborate. For example, if you're using exploratory design, you want to explore new areas of study where little or no prior information exists. Okay, now what you can do literature review, you can do focus group, you can do in-depth interviews or case studies. Example, here can be a company entering a new market, might conduct exploratory research to understand consumer preferences. Okay. Descriptive design, you are trying to answer who, what, where, when, and how, but you're not answering why in descriptive design. You can do surveys, observation, you can do long-term studies. Okay. And then conclusive, here you want to test hypothesis or confirm findings. And then conclusive research provides data that can be used to make decisions or generalize to a larger population. So types can be further divided into causal research, identifying cause and effect relationship, or descriptive research where you're providing quantitative measures. Okay. So methods can be experiment, structured surveys, and statistical analysis. But examples can be a business might use a conclusive research design to determine whether a price change affects sales. Okay. Yeah, we looked at the sources of secondary data, and we said the secondary data sources include the as we said earlier on, data generated within the organization, sales records, financial statements, customer database, and the employee report. And then it will be very important for you to use that one when you want to analyze coming up with strategic plan on the rest. External sources include, but not limited to, reports, research articles, and commercial database. It's helpful for market analysis and competitor benchmark, and helps you to identify trends. It will be very, very important for you to be able to collect secondary data using acceptable methods. So This is very critical. You don't think that's why it is important that your secondary data, especially, should not only just be the one that you've collected internally, because sometimes, especially if it's not published, if it's collected internally and published, it's okay. For example, if you work for Reserve Bank, you realize that they publish annually reports. So reports that are published annually by the bank will contain secondary data published for internal purposes. If you take that particular data, it's better. Even if you are working for Reserve Bank, that particular data is also going to be good and helpful for you. But for example, if my business is just generating data for sales, and I just use that particular data only, some may not trust its credibility. So you can complement such kind of data with also data from the industry. Like in this country, if you are doing businesses, I think Malawi Confederation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry is also a very good platform through which you can now be able to get data. Okay, so you can evaluate data and relevance and accuracy. Data should be evaluated to determine whether it is sustainable for current research objectives. Criteria for evaluating data includes accuracy, timeliness, completeness, and objectivity of the source. Assessing and comparing data. Secondary data can often be assessed through libraries, online database, or purchased from commercial research firms. Analyzing secondary data. After collection, the data is processed and analyzed to extract meaningful insights. And this may involve statistical method or comparative analysis depending on research goals. So what are we saying in summary? Secondary data collection is important and efficient way to gather information, but you must be very careful because sometimes it can be data that is not within any form of context. That's the issue at hand here. All right. Yeah, if you want to go and drink water, it's fine. You want to go and drink water? You can go and drink water, and then we can pick it up from there when you come. Yeah, you okay now? Oh, madam, oh, student. Mungu pita kusaka. Akakonze. Kodi ndi 2 eh? Kuna 3, 2. No, this is not HR, this is market. Research and info system. If you remember the first few weeks, I was talking about sampling, especially when I was discussing with you on the research process. Yeah, do you remember what I meant a sample is? I had drawn something on the board.
I think you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I said, yeah.
Like you said, like it defines the whole population.
Okay, not necessarily defining, but it's a portion.
Like it represents.
Yes. Yes, that's the best one. The best term is what you have just used first. The second one, represents. Yes. That if you want to conduct a study to students at University of Lilongwe, you may not have the time, sometimes even the financial resources to collect information from each single individual. Yeah, you may not. Okay, so what you do instead is you collect a sample because you don't have the time, you don't have the ability to collect from everybody else. So because you cannot collect from every element of everyone in the population, then you do a sample. Now, there are some situations, for example, you've got 20 people. Say we want only students that are doing marketing research, and we find that there are only 20 students. There is no need for me to collect a sample. Why? If I want to do a study for the entire University of Lilongwe, and I find that there are 500 students, I'll be compelled to come up with a sample. But if I want to scale it down to do a study about only those that are doing market research and find that there are only 20 students, I don't need to collect a sample to develop a sample, to sample it. Why? Why will I not sample when it's a small number? Any idea? I just want to test you. If I'm doing a study and in the study I find that I want to interview students from University of Lilongwe, and I find that there are 500 students, but I only have 1 month to do the study. I don't have the time, neither do I have the money to visit all the students. I may get a sample of the 500. I may get maybe 1/3 of the students' population. And the 1/3 of the students' population from year 1 to 4, their responses can represent those that I have not interviewed. Isn't it? Yeah. But if I'm doing a study and my study objectives dictate that my study should only cover say university, should only cover, say, for example, students who are doing market research. Not the entire student population, but students who are doing market research. and I discover that students who are doing market research are only 15. Do I need to sample?
No, because the number is already.
Yeah, it's manageable. Yeah. Now, in that case, I don't need to sample, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what we call a census. I will interview, if my population is 20 or 15, and if I decide to use the entire 15, then I have not sampled. I have done a census. Yeah. Now, one thing that people do is they make a mistake. When we define population in a research, we are not necessarily referring to every single person that ever lives. No. That's not what we are doing. But national statistics at national level, when they talk about population, they talk about all of us that are in Malawi. But in research, when you talk about population, you only refer to a particular category of people who are fitting in the study. Because not everyone will fit. For example, if I want to do a study about the University of Europe, depending on the objectives, it can be for every student. But depending on the objective of the study, it can be only maybe for year 1. Maybe depending on the objective of the study, it can only be me for year 4. I hope you are able to yes. So that's why I want to give this background so that we are all on the same page when you try to define these terms. Population, okay, when you define these terms, sample, because these are the most complicated terms for students, and in most cases, if students find the research difficult, they usually would refer to inconsistencies associated with how they define these terms. There will be, to some extent, some inconsistencies among students on how they attempt to define these terms. Okay. Okay, let's look at it now in a little more detail. From what you defined, it shows that you understand what sample is. But remember, research is a science. And what makes research to be credible? It's its ability to follow scientific methodologies. The same scientific methodologies are the ones that we want to use in this context. So, what are we saying? The universe, also known as population, is a total group of individuals or items that a researcher is interested in studying. Okay? It represents the scope or boundary of the study. So the universe can be finite when the population size is fixed and countable, such as number of employees in the organization, or infinite when the population size is theoretically limitless, such as possible future customers of a product. So in determining the universe, researchers define who or what qualifies to be part of the study. Okay, for example, age, income as part of demographic, geographical scope, or other criteria that are relevant to the research. So the starting point is identifying what we call the universe. Okay, if I'm doing a study for University of Lilongwe and I'm targeting employees at University of Lilongwe, I would fall into this category because it is easy for me to know how many are working here. And when I'm deciding who to approach, it will be easy. For example, I can do a study about promotional practices at the university. Just an example. Wanting to find out whether or not staff are able to see the promotional practices as fair or unfair. Okay. If I conduct that particular study, amongst the staff members, those that have not worked, those that have worked for University of Lilongwe for 2 years or less may not fit the study. Why? What do you think? I'm doing a study about promotional practices at University of Lilongwe to assess the extent to which staff members perceive how promotion is done, whether it is fair or not fair. But such a study, someone who has worked for a year or less than 2 years may not be fit for the study. Why?
Is it not because the time they've worked
Yes.
very short?
Yeah, that
They're not able to how the promotion.
yeah, they cannot appreciate it. Yeah, and they also maybe have also not been able to fit into the category where they can be promoted. Yeah. So I won't give you that example if you answered correctly. Those are the things that we are talking about here. Okay, where we are saying that you don't just say, I have a research and here is my questionnaire, fill it. No. You look at, based on this research objective, then who should be competent enough to provide responses? You must define that very clearly. Who should be able to provide responses? If you don't provide that clearly, then there will be a problem. Okay? So, and there's also this one. In determining the universe, researchers define who or what qualifies to be part of the study. That's exactly what we're talking about. And in this case, we also have these studies, infinite, when population size is theoretically limitless. Yeah, it's very common, especially for research in marketing, where you may not have the exact number of